A millionaire pretended to be poor to test her love. Chapter 1. The Masquerade Begins. Marcus Sterling adjusted his worn baseball cap and glanced at his reflection in the coffee shop window. The designer suit was gone, replaced by faded jeans and a threadbare sweater. His Rolex sat locked in a safety deposit box, traded for a cheap digital watch from the corner store. For 32 years, he had lived as the heir to Sterling Industries. But today, he was just Mark, a struggling freelance graphic designer. The transformation wasn't vanity, it was necessity. 3 failed relationships had taught him a painful lesson. Women fell in love with his bank account, not his heart. Sarah had left when she discovered his modest penthouse was actually a rental. Jennifer had stayed exactly as long as it took to max out the credit cards he'd given her. And Lisa, beautiful, charming Lisa, had been photographed kissing his business rival the same week she'd whispered, "I love you," in his ear. Never again, he had promised himself. The next woman he fell for would love him for who he was, not what he owned. That's when he saw her. Emma Chen sat in the corner booth of the small cafe, her dark hair catching the afternoon light as she hunched over a laptop. Her fingers flew across the keyboard with the intensity of someone fighting against a deadline. A stack of library books teetered beside her half-empty coffee cup, and her brow was furrowed in concentration. She was beautiful, but not in the polished way of the women who usually entered his world. There was something genuine about her. The way she absently tucked a strand of hair behind her ear, the small smile that played on her lips as she worked, the careful way she made her single coffee last for hours. Marcus had been watching her for 3 days now, building up the courage to approach. Today was the day. "Excuse me," he said, sliding into the seat across from her. "I'm sorry to bother you, but I couldn't help noticing you're here every day. I'm Mark, and I was wondering if you might like some company?" Emma looked up, startled. Her eyes were the color of warm honey, and when she smiled, Marcus felt something shift in his chest, something that had nothing to do with money or status. "I'm Emma," she said, closing her laptop. "And actually, yes, I could use a break from this research paper. It's driving me crazy." "What are you working on?" "My master's thesis on economic inequality in urban development. Fascinating stuff, right?" She laughed, but there was a tired edge to it. "Most people's eyes glaze over when I mention it." "Actually, it sounds important," Marcus said, and meant it. "You're studying how development affects different income levels?" Emma's eyes lit up. "Exactly. Most people don't realize how gentrification displaces working families or how economic policies—" She stopped herself, blushing. "Sorry, I get carried away. My friends say I'm too serious." "Don't apologize. Passion is attractive." Their conversation flowed naturally from there. Emma was getting her master's in urban planning while working 2 part-time jobs, tutoring high school students and waitressing at a diner. She lived in a tiny studio apartment and biked everywhere to save money. Her dream was to work for the city planning department to help create affordable housing solutions. As Marcus listened, he felt a mixture of admiration and guilt. Here was a woman fighting for every opportunity, while he had been handed everything on a silver platter. "What about you?" Emma asked. "What do you do?" "Freelance graphic design," Marcus said, the lie rolling off his tongue more easily than he'd expected. "It's inconsistent. Some months are good, others not so much. I'm actually between apartments right now, staying with a friend." It wasn't entirely false. He did have a degree in design, though he'd never needed to use it professionally. "That's tough," Emma said with genuine sympathy. "The gig economy is brutal. Have you considered looking into city contracts? They sometimes need design work for public projects." Marcus nodded, touched by her concern for a stranger's financial struggles. "I'll look into it. Thanks." They talked until the cafe closed, and Marcus found himself reluctant to leave. Emma gathered her books, declining his offer to walk her home. "I only live a few blocks away," she said. "But maybe we could do this again? Same time tomorrow?" "I'd like that," Marcus said, and realized he meant it more than he'd meant anything in years. Chapter 2. The Deepening Deception. Over the following weeks, Marcus and Emma's coffee shop meetings became the highlight of his days. He found himself canceling board meetings and rescheduling important calls just to spend time with her. The more he got to know Emma, the more his initial plan felt like a betrayal. She was everything he'd been searching for: intelligent, compassionate, driven by something deeper than material desires. When she talked about her work, her eyes shone with a passion that made his chest tighten. When she laughed at his jokes, he felt like he could conquer the world. But the lies were multiplying. When Emma suggested they grab dinner at a cheap noodle shop, Marcus had to pretend his credit card was declined. She insisted on paying, and he watched her count out crumpled bills from her wallet, knowing she was probably spending her grocery money on him. When she invited him to her apartment, he marveled at how she'd made the tiny space feel like home, with thrift store furniture and plants grown from kitchen scraps. She apologized for the size, not knowing that his walk in closet was bigger than her entire living area. The worst part was how naturally kindness came to her. She brought him leftovers from the diner, insisting he needed to eat better. She helped him update his portfolio on her old laptop, never knowing that Sterling Industries had a team of designers on payroll. She worried about his financial stress and offered to lend him money she didn't have. "I know what it's like to struggle," she said one evening as they walked through the park. "My parents worked 3 jobs between them just to keep our family afloat. There's no shame in needing help." Marcus felt like a fraud. Here was this incredible woman offering him the very thing he'd been testing her for: unconditional support, while he deceived her about everything. 2 months into their relationship, Emma got food poisoning and called in sick to both her jobs. Marcus showed up at her apartment with soup and medicine, watching her worry about the lost income while she shivered under thin blankets. "I can't afford to be sick," she said weakly. "Rent's due next week." Marcus excused himself to the bathroom and called his assistant, instructing her to anonymously pay Emma's rent. When he returned, he found Emma crying quietly. "Hey, what's wrong?" He sat beside her on the narrow bed. I just, I really like you, Mark, but I'm scared you'll realize I'm not worth all this trouble. I work all the time, I stress about money constantly, and I live in a shoebox. You could probably find someone with less baggage." Marcus's heart broke. "Emma, look at me." He tilted her chin up. "You're the most remarkable person I've ever met. Your baggage is what makes you who you are. Your struggles have given you compassion. Your dreams have given you purpose. Don't ever apologize for being real." "Even if I can't afford nice restaurants or fancy clothes?" "I don't care about any of that," Marcus said, and realized it was the first completely honest thing he'd said to her. They kissed then, and Marcus felt like he was drowning in his own deception. He loved her, truly, completely loved her, but their entire relationship was built on lies. The test intensifies. As their relationship deepened, Marcus found himself living a double life that was becoming increasingly difficult to maintain. During the day, he was Mark, the struggling designer, meeting Emma at coffee shops and cheap diners. At night, he returned to his penthouse to handle Sterling Industries' business, his assistant fielding calls about million-dollar deals while he pretended to worry about paying rent. The guilt was eating him alive, but he couldn't stop. Emma's love felt too pure, too precious to risk losing. And every day, she proved herself in ways that broke his heart. When his laptop broke, she immediately offered to let him use hers, even though it meant she'd have to work late at the library to finish her thesis. When he mentioned his friend's apartment had heating problems, she insisted he stay with her, giving him the bed while she slept on the floor. "You don't have to do this," Marcus had protested. "Yes, I do," Emma said simply. "That's what people do when they care about each other. They help." But the test took a cruel turn one evening when they ran into Jennifer, one of Marcus's ex-girlfriends, at an upscale restaurant Emma had been dying to try. They'd saved for weeks to afford one dinner there. "Marcus?" Jennifer's voice was sharp with surprise. "What are you doing here? And why are you dressed like—" She looked him up and down with barely concealed disgust. "I think you have me confused with someone else," Marcus said quickly, but Jennifer laughed. "Marcus Sterling, heir to Sterling Industries, confused with someone else? That's rich, though I suppose you're slumming it for some reason?" Her gaze shifted to Emma with calculating interest. "And who's this?" Emma looked between them, confusion clear on her face. "I'm sorry, but his name is Mark, and I think you—" "Oh, honey," Jennifer interrupted with false sympathy. "He's been lying to you. This is Marcus Sterling. His family owns half the city. He's worth more than most people see in a lifetime. The color drained from Emma's face. She looked at Marcus, searching his expression for a denial that didn't come. Emma, I can explain, he started, but she was already standing at her chair, scraping against the floor. I need some air. Marcus followed her outside, his heart hammering. Emma, please, let me explain. She spun around, and he saw something in her eyes he'd never seen before, hurt so deep it made him physically ache. Explain what? That you've been lying to me for months? That every conversation we've had, every moment we've shared, was based on deception? Her voice cracked. I told you things I've never told anyone. I worried about you. I tried to help you. I fell in love with you, and you've been laughing at me this whole time. I wasn't laughing. Emma, I love you. You love me? She laughed bitterly. You don't even know me. The woman you've been dating doesn't exist. She's just some poor girl you've been testing, right? Some experiment to see if you could find someone who'd love you for your sparkling personality instead of your money? The accuracy of her words hit him like a physical blow. It wasn't like that. Then what was it like, Marcus? She spat his real name like a curse. Because from where I'm standing, it looks like you took everything I shared with you, every struggle, every fear, every dream, and you used it to make yourself feel better about your trust issues. I wanted to tell you. When? After you'd finished your little sociology experiment? After you'd gathered enough data to prove that poor people are capable of genuine emotion? Tears were streaming down her face now. Do you have any idea how humiliating this is? I've been worrying about you eating properly while you probably have a chef. I've been trying to help you with your career while you own companies. I've been falling asleep on the floor so you could be comfortable in my tiny apartment while you live in some mansion. Emma, please. No. She stepped back, wrapping her arms around herself. You want to know the worst part? I would have understood. If you'd told me the truth from the beginning, if you'd said you were scared about people's motives, I would have understood. I would have been patient. But instead, you chose to lie. You chose to test me like I was some kind of lab rat. I was protecting myself. From what? From me? From the possibility that someone might actually love you for who you are instead of what you have? She shook her head. You're right to be worried, Marcus, but not for the reasons you think. She turned to walk away, and panic seized him. Emma, wait, please. I know I messed up, but what we have is real. She stopped but didn't turn around. What we have is a lie, and I don't even know who you really are. Then she was gone, disappearing into the crowd, leaving Marcus standing alone on the sidewalk with the weight of his deception crushing down on him. Chapter 4. The Reckoning. The weeks that followed were the longest of Marcus's life. He tried calling Emma, but she'd blocked his number. He went to the coffee shop, but she never appeared. He even tried waiting outside her apartment, but her roommate told him she'd asked him to stay away. Marcus threw himself into work, but the board meetings and business deals that had once energized him now felt hollow. His assistant noticed his distraction. His friends commented on his mood, and his mother, who had been pushing him to settle down for years, finally stopped asking about his love life. You look terrible, his best friend David said over drinks one evening. What's going on? Marcus found himself telling the whole story, the deception, the lies, the way Emma's face had looked when she'd learned the truth. David listened without judgment, but when Marcus finished, his friend's expression was serious. You really screwed up, David said bluntly. But not for the reasons you think. What do you mean? You think the problem is that you lied about money, but the real problem is that you didn't trust her. You met this incredible woman, and instead of being vulnerable enough to show her who you really are, you created a test she didn't even know she was taking. Marcus stared into his drink. I was protecting myself. From what? From the possibility of being hurt? Marcus, you can't have love without risk, and you can't have trust without vulnerability. You sabotaged your own relationship because you were too scared to believe someone could love you. But what if she had been like the others? What if she only wanted my money? Then you would have found out eventually, and you would have dealt with it. But you never gave her that chance. You never gave your relationship a chance to be real. David's words haunted Marcus for days. He began to see his actions not as protection, but as cowardice. He'd been so afraid of being used that he'd used Emma instead, turning their relationship into an experiment where only he knew the rules. 2 weeks later, Marcus made a decision that surprised everyone, including himself. He called a press conference and announced that he was stepping down as CEO of Sterling Industries, transitioning to a consulting role while pursuing other interests. I want to use my resources to make a real difference, he told the gathered reporters. Not just in business, but in the community. I'm particularly interested in urban development and affordable housing initiatives. The announcement made headlines, but Marcus only cared about one person's reaction. He hoped Emma would see it and understand that he was trying to change, that he was trying to become the man she'd believed him to be. But weeks passed with no word from her. Chapter 5. The Truth Unveiled. Emma saw the news coverage. It was impossible to miss. Marcus Sterling's face was on every business channel, in every newspaper. She watched from her tiny apartment as he announced his new philanthropic focus, his interest in urban planning, his desire to address economic inequality. The words should have made her happy. This was everything she'd ever dreamed of. Someone with real power and resources caring about the issues she'd devoted her life to. But all she felt was a hollow ache in her chest. Her roommate found her crying over her laptop one evening, the news article still open on the screen. "You still love him," Jessica said, sitting beside her on the couch. "I don't know who he is," Emma replied. "The man I fell in love with was kind and struggling and real, but that person doesn't exist." "Doesn't he?" Jessica challenged. I saw you two together. I saw how he looked at you, how he listened to you. That wasn't fake. But everything else was. Was it? Or was he just scared?" Jessica pulled up another article on her phone. "Look at this. He's donated millions to affordable housing projects. He's funding 3 new community centers. He's literally doing everything you said you wanted to do." Emma read the article with growing surprise. Marcus wasn't just throwing money at problems, he was getting involved, learning, working with community organizations and urban planning experts. He was doing exactly what she would have done if she'd had the resources. "It doesn't change what he did," Emma said, but her voice lacked conviction. "No, it doesn't, but maybe it shows he learned from it." That weekend, Emma made a decision that surprised even herself. She got dressed, took the bus across town, and knocked on the door of Marcus's penthouse. He answered, looking exhausted and thinner than she remembered. When he saw her, his eyes widened with shock and something that looked like hope. "Emma? How did you?" "I saw the news," she said simply. "Can we talk?" He stepped aside, and she entered his real world for the first time. The penthouse was beautiful but sterile, all clean lines and expensive furniture. It felt nothing like the warm lived-in spaces where they'd spent their time together. "This is who you really are," she said, looking around. "No," Marcus said firmly. "This is what I have. It's not who I am." Emma turned to face him. "Then who are you, Marcus? Because I honestly don't know anymore." Marcus was quiet for a long moment, and when he spoke, his voice was raw with emotion. "I'm someone who was so afraid of being hurt that I hurt the person I love most. I'm someone who had everything but never understood what mattered until I met you. I'm someone who's been so surrounded by people who wanted things from me that I forgot how to trust." He moved closer, his eyes never leaving hers. "But with you, I remembered what it felt like to be valued for something other than my bank account. When you worried about me eating enough, when you offered to lend me money you didn't have, when you gave me your bed and slept on the floor, that was love, Emma. Real love. And I was too damaged to recognize it without testing it first." "You hurt me," Emma said quietly. "You made me question everything about our relationship, about myself. I keep wondering what else you lied about. What else was part of your test?" "Nothing else," Marcus said desperately. "Emma, every conversation we had, every moment we shared, every feeling I expressed, that was all real. The only thing I lied about was money. Money isn't just money, Marcus. It's security, it's options, it's power. You watched me stress about rent while you could have solved my problems with pocket change. You let me worry about your future while you own half the city. That's not just about money. That's about fundamental honesty." Marcus felt tears burning his eyes. "You're right. I was selfish and cruel, and I don't deserve your forgiveness." But Emma, please believe me when I say that loving you was the most real thing I've ever experienced. Everything I felt, everything I said about how amazing you are, that was true. Emma was quiet for a long time, and Marcus held his breath, afraid to hope. I've been thinking about something, she finally said. The night we met, you could have chosen any woman in that cafe, but you chose me. Not because I was the prettiest or the most available, but because something about me caught your attention. What was it? Marcus thought back to that first day, remembering the way Emma had looked hunched over her laptop, completely absorbed in her work. Your passion, he said. The way you cared so much about your research that you forgot about everything else. You were beautiful, but more than that, you were alive with purpose. I'd never seen anything like it. And that person, the one who caught your attention, she's still here, Marcus. I'm still the same person who cares about urban planning and economic inequality. I'm still the same person who works 2 jobs and lives in a studio apartment and bikes everywhere. Your money doesn't change who I am. But it changes everything between us, Marcus said. How can you trust me now? How can we have a real relationship when there's this huge imbalance between us? Emma moved closer, and Marcus's heart began to race. Maybe we can't, or maybe we can find a way to make it work. But Marcus, if we're going to try, it has to be based on complete honesty. No more tests, no more lies, no more pretending to be someone you're not. Does that mean you'll give me another chance? Emma looked into his eyes, seeing the fear and hope and desperate love there. I don't know. I'm still hurt and I'm still angry, but I also know that love like this doesn't come along often. Maybe it's worth fighting for. I'll do anything, Marcus said. I'll prove to you that I can be trusted. I'll show you who I really am. Who are you really, Marcus? He thought about it seriously. I'm someone who's been given incredible privileges and is trying to learn how to use them responsibly. I'm someone who's made terrible mistakes, but wants to do better. I'm someone who loves you more than he's ever loved anything, and who will spend the rest of his life trying to deserve that love if you'll let him. Emma felt something shift in her chest. Not forgiveness, not yet, but the possibility of it. It's going to take time, she said, and work. Real work, not just grand gestures. I know, and I need to know all of it. Your real life, your real world, your real problems. No more pretending. I promise. Emma nodded slowly. Then maybe we can start over. Not as Mark and Emma, but as Marcus and Emma, as the people we really are. Marcus felt hope bloom in his chest for the first time in weeks. I'd like that, more than anything. As they stood in his sterile penthouse, surrounded by the trappings of wealth that had once seemed so important, Marcus realized that Emma was right. Money hadn't changed who she was, and it didn't have to change who he was either. He was still the man who'd fallen in love with her passion and her kindness. He was still the man who'd found something real in a world full of artifice. The difference was that now he was brave enough to be that man without hiding behind lies. Their second beginning wouldn't be easy. There would be difficult conversations, moments of doubt, and the ongoing work of rebuilding trust. But as Emma smiled at him, tentatively, carefully, but genuinely, Marcus knew it would be worth it. Because sometimes the greatest test of love isn't whether someone will love you at your worst, but whether you're brave enough to show them who you really are. And for the first time in his life, Marcus Sterling was ready to be brave. Epilogue. 6 months later. Emma knocked on the door of the community center, her heart racing with nervous excitement. Inside, she could hear voices, Marcus's voice among them, discussing plans for the new affordable housing development. When the meeting ended and Marcus emerged, he looked surprised but pleased to see her. How did it go? She asked. Good, I think. The community board has some concerns about gentrification, which is completely valid. We're going back to the drawing board on the commercial space. He paused, studying her expression. You look like you have news. Emma grinned. I got the job, the city planning position. I start Monday. Marcus's face lit up with genuine joy. Emma, that's incredible. I'm so proud of you. There's more, she said, her smile widening. They want me to liaise with private developers on affordable housing projects. Apparently, they've been impressed with some recent philanthropic work in the area. Marcus laughed. Are you saying we might be working together? I'm saying we might be working toward the same goals, Emma corrected. As equals this time. As equals, Marcus agreed, and meant it. 6 months of rebuilding their relationship had taught them both valuable lessons. Marcus had learned that love required vulnerability, not tests. Emma had learned that forgiveness was a choice, not a feeling. Together, they discovered that true partnership meant supporting each other's dreams, not sacrificing their own identities. As they walked through the neighborhood where they'd first met, Emma reached for Marcus's hand. He interlaced their fingers, still amazed that she'd chosen to trust him again. I have a confession, Emma said as they passed the coffee shop where it all began. Oh no, Marcus said with mock concern. Please tell me you're not secretly wealthy too. Emma laughed. No, still poor as a church mouse, but I have to admit, I've been testing you too. Marcus stopped walking. What do you mean? These past 6 months, watching how you've changed, how you've used your resources, how you've treated me and everyone else, I've been testing whether you learned anything from what happened between us. And? Emma stood on her tiptoes and kissed him softly. You passed. As they continued walking, hands entwined, Marcus realized that Emma was right. Love was a test, not a cruel experiment designed to prove unworthiness, but a daily choice to be honest, vulnerable, and brave. It was the test of whether two people could see each other clearly and choose to stay. And for the first time in his life, Marcus was confident he could pass that test every day for the rest of his life. The sun was setting behind the city skyline, painting the sky in shades of gold and pink. In the distance, construction cranes marked the sites of new, affordable housing developments. Emma's thesis had been published and was being cited by urban planners across the country. Marcus's foundation was funding community programs in 6 cities. But none of that mattered as much as the simple fact that they were walking together. Two people who had learned that love without honesty is just another kind of poverty, and that the greatest wealth is being truly known by another person. In the end, the test wasn't whether Emma could love Marcus despite his wealth, or whether Marcus could love Emma despite her lack of it. The test was whether they could love each other because of who they really were, flawed, growing, imperfect people trying to make a difference in the world. And that was a test they were both finally ready to take.